I cannot believe what I am witnessing. Not only are we witnessing the most unlucky player, but also the most fierce competitor all in one. So stay tuned only here on Mets Digest to hear all about Francisco Alvarez, who is super unlucky, but also a bulldog. It's only here on Mets Digest. I'm your host today, Mike Duda. We're going to go over Francisco Alvarez's multiple injuries, but first we got to talk about some subscribers, and that being the fact that 69% of you that watch these videos aren't one. So please do me a favor, do us a favor here at Mets Digest, and hit that free subscribe button. That way we can bring content to you about the amazing. So without further ado, let's go ahead and dive right in. Kicking it off with Francisco Alvarez being hurt again, and it's basically the same injury. Anthony DiComo reported last night during the Mets game, during a brutal game, by the way, that Francisco Alvarez has broken a finger again, but the news wasn't all too bad. We'll hear from him in just a second because in case you didn't know, Francisco Alvarez is indeed hurt. He did something in his thumb about a week and a half ago on Sunday Night Baseball during the Little League Classic against the Seattle Mariners, slid into second base, and as you could tell, he was clearly in some discomfort. Now, that was on his right thumb. Last night, he actually broke his left pinky. So let's go ahead and dive right in talking about this with the experts. It's Anthony DiComo who describes what exactly happened. He said Mets catcher Francisco Alvarez sustained a small fracture in his left pinky finger when he was hit by a pitch on Wednesday night. Yet, the Mets hope that he will be able to return to baseball activities as soon as this weekend. Now, he gives a little bit more context, saying that Alvarez, who sprained the UCL in his thumb, this is what I was talking about earlier this month, was making his first rehab appearance for AAA Syracuse. Now, that was 2 Sundays ago on Sunday Night Baseball. It was a week and a half ago that he had this original injury. He only took about 9-10 days to get back into rehab assignments, only took a week to get back to swinging a bat and having BP and doing BP, and then a week and a half to get back into a game. And of course, right when he's back into a game, he ends up injuring a different finger, but again, another finger injury, which is kind of insane to me. So obviously he was making that first rehab appearance when he fractured the pinky on his opposite hand, his left hand. Now that is the hand that he receives the ball with. So a lot of people are saying, oh, he might be fine to play defense when he had the original injury because that was on his right thumb. That's if he can still throw the baseball. But now you have to worry about that acting up and he can't throw the ball. And you have to worry about the left hand, which is the glove hand where he receives the ball to catch 95, 100 plus mile an hour fastballs and also be able to block and do everything that a catcher can. When he participated in a throwing drill at Citi Field before the Mets' inevitable 7-4 loss to the Marlins, the Mets planned to wait for Alvarez's inflammation to subside before determining next steps. So, of course, with an injury, with a broken bone, there's going to be some inflammation around the area. They're going to wait for that inflammation to go down. I assume they're going to give him cortisone shots to make sure that inflammation goes down as quick as possible. And from there, they are going to determine the next steps. But if he can tolerate the pain, he could restart baseball activities within 2 or 3 days before next week, which is absolutely insanity. So what did the skip have to say? It's Carlos Mendoza, the manager. He said this should be relatively short, but obviously it's a little bit of a setback compared to what the original plan was. So will he actually come back? Well, Mendy has the answers for you there, saying we're not going to put him in a position where he's very uncomfortable. As tough as he is, we'll get into that in a little bit. He is incredible. Very, very tough guy. He's human. So I think we've got to get him to a point where it's manageable because now we're talking about the receiving hand too, the receiving hand and the throwing hand, and you also have to grip a bat. You have to hit. Everyone was saying Francisco Alvarez, it was really unfortunate that he got hurt because he was hitting so well. Not only do you have to catch the ball, not only do you have to throw the ball, and both of those hands you have problems with, you also have to grip a bat and be able to swing a bat and face elite pitching, the best of the best pitchers in the world. But it's a small fracture. We've got to just wait. So, how does Alvarez feel per Mendoza? Well, obviously he's frustrated, but there's still hope. There's still a feeling that he can get back this year and help us win baseball games and hopefully go far in the playoffs. Definitely, you don't want to be on the IL. You don't want to miss time. In Alvy's case, it's been hard for him. But our job is to continue to support him and continue to stay positive with him, and we will, because he's very strong mentally, obviously, physically, obviously, and he'll get through this too. So before we go ahead and talk about why he is just so tough, let's talk about a little bit of statistics, and that being that he got red hot before he was injured. Remember when he got demoted to AAA and I brought up these stats, and it was around a 220 batting average, sub 300 OBP. The OPS was lucky to be around the 650 mark. I personally was saying this guy has been a waste. He's a first round pick. The Mets took him in the first round, and all of a sudden he completely turned everything around. Look at July and August. He was demoted on June 21st, brought back up in July, and he absolutely tore up the baseball. He was also pretty solid on the defensive end. The numbers speak for themselves. A 286 average in the month of July, 341 in August. Those OPSs are off the charts. The last 30 days is a good representation of what Francisco Alvarez has been doing, at least since he got recalled from AAA. And look at that OPS, above 1. We've gone over these numbers multiple times. Check out all of those Francisco Alvarez videos if you haven't already to hear some more statistics in deep, because this is more of a news video. This is more breaking the news. So I'm going to give you my reaction to that instead of really focusing on the stats. But a 326 average, 383 OBP, above 600 slugging, that is really, really good. And it's somewhat of a career season for Francisco Alvarez. Now, obviously, when you pull up his baseball reference, all of his counting stats are not going to be at its best in 2025. He's not going to have the most homers, the most RBIs, most games, most runs. That's because he hasn't played in as many games. He spent a lot of time injured. He spent time in the minor leagues. And the season is not over yet. It's still about 135 games in, so there's over 25 games left to go. But the numbers that are based on averages, those are basically all in career highs except for slugging, where he is slightly behind 2022, which doesn't even count really because it was only 14 plate appearances and 12 ABs. So amongst what would be qualified, Francisco Alvarez is having a career season in terms of the average numbers. A 265 batting average, 349 OBP, 787 OPS for a 125 OPS plus. Remember that league average OPS plus is 100, so he is 25 OPS plus points above league average for all of this year, including the first 2 months of the season where he was horrendous. That is how much he has turned around his season. Now, some other stats that I want to go over is actually ROBA, which is right next to OPS+. According to Baseball Reference, that measures a player's offensive contributions weighed in proportion to each event's actual run value. That is at a 354, which is also a career best, and his RBAT plus is 131, almost a form of war, where, as we've talked about before, league average is 100, so he's 31 ROBAT plus points above league average. Very, very good, and obviously he is the best option back there on an offensive standpoint, and he's a pretty solid defender. He's all right. He's not going to be Luis Stearns nor Kodai Senga behind the dish, but he is not bad, and it's very clear the only thing that he is trailing in is games, plate appearances, and hits to Luis Stearns. In fact, he's tied with Stearns in hits with substantially less plate appearances and substantially less games played. Better WAR, better numbers overall, better homers, better RBIs. All of the above is better for Alvarez because he is the right choice. Last thing I want to go over is the original news breaking. Francisco Alvarez says he broke his pinky last night, that being the night of the injury on Wednesday, on the pitch that hit him. But he's still hopeful he can play again this year. The hope is that Alvarez can return to play in 2 to 3 days. We've heard this before, given that this is a small fracture to his pinky. But it is a broken bone, which of course is not ideal. Alvarez was out playing catch earlier today. We also heard this, that being yesterday, but he had a trainer catching the ball for him. Now, you guys might have clicked on this video to hear my thoughts on Francisco Alvarez and why I think he is so tough. That's exactly what I'll give you right now. I think it's right in front of you. I mean, not only did you really mess up your thumb on the interior to the point that you need surgery. In fact, it should be surgery right now. It should have been weeks ago that Francisco Alvarez got the surgery, fixed his thumb. But instead, he is such a competitor and such a bulldog that he decided, I'm going to wait on the surgery and wait till the offseason because I can't do anything worse except completely tear a muscle. I've completely torn muscles before. It's really painful. So the fact that he is even playing through a possibility of going through such immense pain because he wants to win and he wants to help this Mets club, that is extremely noble and it should be very notable. So he does that. He takes BP a week after doing all of that garbage in his thumb, which is really, really bad and requires surgery. And after that, he gets hit in the hand, in the pinky, in his first game back. And what does he say? Oh, I'll be back in 2 to 3 days. What a bulldog. This guy is absolutely incredible. I know I've said some bad stuff about him because he hasn't produced. I said, look, he's been a waste. He's been this. He's been that. Yes, that was the point. But ever since he went down to AAA, which was really the big Met intention, I'd say it's the only Met intention as well for sending him down in the first place, was to get him right. Get that number 1 pick, that first round pick potential that you drafted. And that is exactly what happened. That number 1 prospect in all of baseball. That is what Francisco Alvarez is, and the Mets have truly found it. Not only has he been producing incredibly up here in the bigs, but he is obviously a bulldog that will play through literally any injury and any amount of pain. He's awesome. I completely have changed my opinion on him. He is now honestly one of my favorite Mets. Love it for Alvarez. I really hope he comes back this year. What a bulldog. What a guy. And that is exactly what you want out of an athlete. I want to win. I'll do anything to win. And that perfectly defines Francisco Alvarez. So go down there in the comment section. Let me know what you think. Do you agree that Francisco Alvarez is an absolute dog? And he's a really good player, obviously, but also a competitor and clearly a guy who will play through anything that he needs to win. Let me know your thoughts. Give me your reasonings down below. Unfortunately, that's all the time I have for you in this news update video. Thank you so much always for watching, and let's go Mets.